Let me tell you something. Standing alone doesn't mean you're lost. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you've chosen truth over comfort. There comes a moment when you got to ask yourself, who am I walking with and where are they taking me? Because not everybody you walk with wants to see you rise. Some folks are just around because your light makes their shadows disappear. And here's the truth. If you keep trying to sit at a table where you're not respected, you'll forget how valuable your voice is. You'll shrink. You'll settle. You'll start believing you're only worth what they give you. And that's a dangerous thing. Let me be clear. It is better to walk alone in purpose than to march your crowds that mock your worth. Because when you stand alone for what's right, when you walk alone with integrity, you're never really alone. You're walking with your destiny. You're walking with God's timing. You're walking with the fire of every trial you've survived. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. That's not just a nice phrase. It's a truth that carries deep weight. Every time you let someone talk down to you, dismiss your efforts, or disregard your presence, you send a silent message. This is acceptable. This is okay. But it's not. And if you don't draw the line, they'll keep walking all over you like you're just part of the floor. Self-respect is not arrogance. It's not pride out of control. It's not about thinking you're better than anyone else. It's about recognizing your God-given worth and refusing to hand that over for the sake of belonging. You weren't born to be overlooked, to be tolerated, or to fit into spaces that were never built to hold your value. You were made with purpose, with intention. So when someone treats you like you're optional, like you're replaceable, you don't argue, you exit. But the truth is, people don't value what you don't protect. If you don't defend your peace, your time, your effort, and your love, you open the door for people to misuse them. If you say yes to everything just to keep people around, you end up saying no to yourself over and over again. And eventually you'll start to forget what your own voice sounds like, what your own dreams look like before you let someone else reshape them. You have to understand something important. The more you respect yourself, the more uncomfortable it will make some people. Especially those who benefited from your silence, your compliance, your lowered standards. And when that happens, don't feel guilty, feel proud, because you're growing, you're rising. And growth will always disrupt people who are content to stay the same. People will test your boundaries, not because they don't understand them, but because they want to see if you really mean them. And when you let things slide once, when you bend just a little too far, just to keep the peace, you teach them that you can be pushed, that your value is up for negotiation. That's where the cycle begins. But you have the power to stop it, not with anger, not with hate, but with strength. With stillness, with clarity, with a calm and confident no. Walking away doesn't mean you're bitter, better than the energy they gave you, better than the disrespect they threw at you, better than settling for crumbs when you bring a whole feast to the table. You are not hard to love. You are not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong people. And the longer you keep asking, the longer you delay the ones who are waiting to treat you right. But them misunderstand you. Let them gossip. Let them think you changed, because you did. Yeah, you stopped shrinking. You stopped tolerating. You stopped explaining yourself to people committed to not listening. And now, you're walking in something called self-respect, and that's a walk worth taking, even if it's a lonely one for a while. Remember this, your peace is too expensive to be bought by cheap relationships. Your time is too sacred to be wasted on those who don't see your worth. And your presence? That's a privilege, not a guarantee. You don't have to fight for space where you're not honored. Walk away with your head high and your soul intact. That's self-respect. And once you claim it, never give it back. Your value is not determined by how many people surround you. It's not measured by how loud the applause is or how many people call your name when things are going well. Your value is inherent. It's embedded in who you are, not in who validates you. That's a lesson too many people learn too late. After they've spent years chasing affirmation from people who only showed up for the benefits, not the building process. There's a danger in tying your worth to external company. When you start depending on others to feel seen, you hand them the remote control to your confidence. And if they walk away, they take your sense of self with them. That's not living, that's surviving in someone else's shadow. Real strength is knowing who you are when no one's cheering. Real value is recognizing that you matter, even in silence. Some people stay in the wrong circles just to avoid being alone. But if the company you keep makes you question your identity, if it makes you feel small, overlooked, or replaceable, then you're not avoiding loneliness. You're surrounding yourself with noise that drowns out your potential. Being with the wrong people can leave you more empty than standing by yourself ever could. Because when people don't value you, they don't protect your name, they don't respect your time, and they don't consider your... That's why it's critical to know your own value before you try to share your life with others. If you don't believe in your own worth, you'll always be looking for someone else to define it for you. And the problem is, people can't see what you don't show. If you carry yourself like you're unsure, the world will mirror that uncertainty. But if you walk in your truth with quiet confidence and clear intention, you change the way people respond to you. You set the standard. You've got to understand, not everyone will get you. Not everyone will appreciate the way you think, love, create, or lead. And that's okay. You weren't meant to be for everyone. You were meant to be authentic. The people who matter will find you, but only if you stop hiding in places you've outgrown. Stop diluting who you are just to be accepted by people who were never meant to go where you're headed. The truth is, when you stand in your own light, some people will walk away. But that's not rejection. It's refinement. It's the universe clearing space for alignment. You don't need to beg for inclusion. You don't need to force connection. When you know your value, you operate differently. You speak differently. You attract differently. You don't chase, you choose, and you don't settle for half-hearted energy just to feel full. Some of the loneliest people are the ones surrounded by the most bodies. Don't let the illusion of company fool you into thinking you're safe. Safety is found in authenticity, in knowing that whether you stand with a crowd or by yourself, you are enough. You are solid, and you are seen, even if only by yourself right now. Learn to enjoy your own company. Learn to grow in solitude, because when you're comfortable with who you are alone, you stop tolerating what's beneath you in relationships, friendships, and partnerships. You stop giving discounts on your spirit just to feel connected, and you start walking with purpose, even if that path looks empty at first. Remember this, your value doesn't decrease when people walk away. Sometimes it increases. Because the absence of the wrong people makes room for the right ones, and the right ones, they won't need convincing. They'll see you clearly and value you fully because you first learn to value yourself. Loneliness isn't always a curse. Yet sometimes it's the beginning of clarity. It's the moment when the noise dies down, the masks come off, and all that's left is you, your thoughts, your truths, and your unfinished business with yourself. Most people run from that silence. They run toward distractions, surround themselves with shallow conversations and temporary companionships, all to avoid facing the stillness. But the stillness is where the real work happens. It's where you start to hear the voice you've been ignoring, your own. Standing alone doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you failed at relationships or friendships. It means you've chosen to pause. You've chosen to stop walking with people who don't walk with respect. You've chosen to no longer confuse presence with loyalty. And in that moment of isolation, you find something most people never discover: clarity about who you are and what you will no longer tolerate. There is something sacred about solitude. When you're not trying to impress anyone, when no one's around to critique or influence your decisions, you begin to peel back the layers. You get honest. You recognize your patterns. You see where you've compromised too much, where you've said yes too often, and where you've been showing up for people who never intended to do the same for you. That awareness doesn't come when you're in a crowd. It comes when you're alone with your thoughts. Don't let the world convince you that being alone is a weakness. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. One is a state of peace. The other is a cry for connection. And here's the truth. You can feel lonelier surrounded by the wrong people than you ever will standing alone in truth. The wrong company drains you. They question your dreams, laugh at your growth, and keep you small because they're intimidated by who you're becoming. Being around that kind of energy is far more dangerous than sitting in a room by yourself and learning to love the sound of your own soul. This is why clarity comes when you stop running from aloneness. You start seeing what you actually want, not what others have convinced you to settle for. You begin to remember what makes your spirit light up, what gives you peace, and what kind of energy you need in your life. That clarity is priceless. It's the foundation for everything you're going to build. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. But that time is worth it. In solitude, you gain perspective. You stop looking at life through the lens of other people's expectations. You stop chasing acceptance and start cultivating authenticity. That's when your mindset shifts from how do I keep them to do they even deserve to be here? And that right there is power. That's self-awareness. That's maturity. So don't rush to fill the silence. Let it teach you. Let it sharpen you. Let it build a version of you that's not dependent on validation, not shaken by distance, not desperate for company. Because once you find peace in solitude, you become dangerous in the best way. You become unshakable. You become grounded, and you stop settling for anything less than what aligns with your purpose. Eventually, the right people will come, the ones who don't feel threatened by your strength, and the ones who don't flinch at your boundaries, the ones who see your solitude not as a wall, but as a gate. And they'll knock, not barge in. But until then, let the stillness do its work. Let the quiet shape you. Let the loneliness lead you to clarity. Because once you find peace alone, you'll never again accept chaos just to feel connected. Let me talk to you for a minute. See, healing, true healing, isn't about pretending like the pain never happened. It's not about slapping on a smile and convincing the world you're okay. No, real healing is integration. It's when the pieces of you, once broken, once scattered by trauma, regret, or disappointment, start finding their way back home. Now you may not even realize it, but if you listen closely to yourself, to your patterns, your energy, your presence, you will see the signs. Let me walk you through what those signs look like. Not from theory, but from lived experience, from the grind of personal growth. When you begin to heal through integration, one of the most powerful and telling signs is that you stop reacting and you start responding. That might sound subtle on the surface, but it's everything. Because reaction is survival. Response, that's consciousness, that's growth. That's the evidence that your nervous system, your emotions, and your soul are no longer in a tug of war. They're starting to work together. See, a reaction is automatic. It's fast, impulsive, often driven by fear, pain, or old trauma. It's what happens when the inner child, the wounded version of you, takes the wheel and hits the gas without thinking. You get criticized, then you snap. Someone triggers you, and suddenly you're defending yourself like it's a war. You get uncomfortable, and you run, lash out, shut down, or over-explain. Reactions are the echoes of unprocessed pain, old programs running in the background. They're not evidence of who you are. They're echoes of who you were in moments of survival. But when you're healing through integration, something starts to shift. You begin to notice the space between the trigger and the choice. You begin to feel the urge to react. And instead of going on autopilot, you breathe, you pause. That pause is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's power. It means you're no longer being dragged around by your impulses. You're learning to feel the heat without being burned by it. That's the kind of transformation that doesn't always get loud applause, but it's the root of lasting change. You start asking different questions. Instead of, how dare they treat me like that? You ask, why did that bother me so deeply? Instead of, what's wrong with them? You ask, what am I still carrying that this just touched? You stop blaming everything on the outside world and start doing the internal work of understanding your triggers, your stories, your wounds, not to condemn yourself, but to reclaim power from the chaos. And the beautiful part is, this doesn't mean you stop feeling. You still get angry, you still get hurt, you still get annoyed, but your emotions no longer hijack the conversation. They become information, not commands. And that's key. Because emotions are not enemies. They're messengers. When you're integrated, you don't ignore them and you don't obey them blindly either. You listen, you get curious, you decide. That's not just emotional intelligence, that's emotional ownership. People around you will notice too. Where you used to escalate, now you de-escalate. Where you used to explode, now you express, you communicate instead of retaliate. You protect your peace without burning bridges. And don't get it twisted, this is not about being passive or soft. This is about having authority over your inner world so that no one on the outside gets to control how you show up. It doesn't mean you always get it right. You'll still slip. You'll still react sometimes. But even when you do, there's a new voice inside, gentle, wise, grounded, that says, let's look at that. Let's learn from that. You don't shame yourself anymore. You observe, you adjust, you evolve. That's the sign of someone who's not just trying to appear healed, Who is actually doing the work? So when you find yourself pausing in moments where you used to explode, when you start choosing your next move instead of being ruled by your last wound, when you feel the fire rise inside of you and still find the clarity to speak from grace, not grief, not too small, that's monumental. That's healing. That's integration. That's you becoming the person you were always meant to be. You know you're healing through integration when you make space for the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it shakes you, even when it calls you to confront parts of yourself you used to avoid. That's not easy. It takes courage to welcome the truth in a world and a mind that often prefers illusions. It takes strength to look at the parts of your story that don't make you proud, the parts that hurt, the parts that you buried so deep you almost forgot they were there. See, when you're still in survival mode, denial can feel like protection. You tell yourself what you need to hear just to get through the day. I'm fine. It wasn't that bad. I moved. You wear those statements like armor because facing the real story, your real emotions, your real pain, your real mistakes feels like it could break you. But what integration teaches you is this: truth doesn't break you. Avoiding it does. Healing doesn't mean rewriting your past. It means reclaiming it. It means saying, yes, I hurt. Yes, I hurt. Yes, I made choices I regret. And yes, I am still worthy. I am still evolving. I am still whole. That's the moment everything starts to shift, because you stop living in fragments. You stop rejecting parts of yourself, and you begin to weave all the pieces, light and dark, strength and struggle, into one story. When you integrate, truth becomes your foundation, not your enemy. You start telling yourself the truth about your patterns. You stop blaming others for everything and start owning your role. So, not to beat yourself up, but to liberate yourself. You stop pretending your childhood didn't leave scars. You stop pretending that relationship didn't change you. You stop pretending that smile you wear in public is always real. You get honest, and that honesty, sets you free. There's a quiet, revolutionary power in looking at your reflection, flaws, regrets, lessons, and all, and saying, I see you. That's not weakness. That's maturity. That's integrity. And the more you practice it, the less shame holds you, because shame survives in silence and secrecy. But when you bring truth to light, shame begins to wither. You no longer have to keep hiding behind perfection or performance. You're able to show up authentically, fully, completely as you are. This doesn't mean you dump your whole past on everyone you meet. It doesn't mean you lose all boundaries. It means you stop hiding from yourself. It means the stories you used to whisper with fear, you now hold with compassion. The moments you used to suppress, you can now revisit without being consumed by them. You can speak truth to yourself in a way that empowers, not destroys. That's how you know healing is happening, not because the pain is gone, but because it no longer has the power to silence your truth. People who are integrating don't flinch at self-reflection. They seek it. They're hungry for clarity. They don't run from accountability. They embrace it. Because they know the only way to grow is through, not around. And they also understand this: truth is layered. You may not see it all at once. But every time you choose to look a little deeper, to listen a little closer, to sit with discomfort instead of rushing to escape it, you move one step closer to wholeness. You begin to trust yourself more. Because when you're honest with yourself, you know you're not pretending. You know your peace is built on something real, and that kind of peace, it's unshakable. That kind of strength, it's not loud, but it's solid. That's what integration feels like. You're no longer editing yourself to fit someone else's version of you. You're living in alignment with what's real. And maybe the most powerful part, you realize that the truth, as uncomfortable as it may be, is never your enemy. It's your invitation, your teacher, your liberation. You know you're healing through integration when you start to forgive yourself, not by forgetting what happened, not by pretending it didn't matter, but by holding your past with compassion, learning from it, and choosing to move forward. That kind of forgiveness is not passive. It's not some fluffy idea where you just let it go and everything magically resets. No, it's deliberate, it's gritty, it takes deep intentional work, and it changes your life. See, when you're not healed, you walk around with invisible weights tied to your back. You replay the moments you wish you could undo, the words you said when you were angry, the chances you didn't take, the signs you ignored, the people you hurt, and the ways you let yourself down. And every time you think about them, there's a voice inside that whispers, you should have known better. That voice, that's shame, that's judgment. That's the internal prison many people live in without even realizing it. But integration is what sets you free, because integration says, yes, that happened. Yes, I made those choices, but I'm not going to keep punishing myself. I'm going to sit with the lesson, not the guilt. You begin to separate your actions from your identity. You stop defining yourself by your worst moment. That's powerful. No, that's powerful because it means you believe you are more than the sum of your mistakes. And when you truly believe that, you give yourself room to grow. Forgiving yourself doesn't mean you dismiss the consequences. It doesn't mean you avoid accountability. In fact, it's the opposite. It means you face your truth fully, but without the poison of self-hate. You start asking, what did that experience teach me? Who was I back then? And what did I need that I didn't know how to ask for? You get curious, you explore, and eventually you replace judgment with understanding. That's how healing happens. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is not someone else. It's the version of you that didn't know how to cope, that accepted less than you deserved, that stayed too long, lashed out, broke down, gave up. But here's the truth. You did the best you could with the tools and awareness you had at that time. And maybe now you see it clearly. Maybe now you have better tools. That's what growth looks like. And you don't have to hate who you were to become who you are. The moment you stop asking, why did I do that, with resentment, and start asking it with compassion, is the moment you reclaim your power. That's self-forgiveness. That's when you stop letting your past dominate your present. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop over-compensating. You stop believing you have to earn your right to peace, to love, to joy. You understand that healing isn't a reward for perfection. It's a right. It's your birthright. When you integrate, you stop hiding your history. You start owning it. Not proudly, but responsibly. You know what happened. You know who you hurt. You know what it cost you, and still you hold space for your own humanity. You remind yourself, I'm still learning. I'm still becoming. I'm still worthy. That's what brings peace, not erasure, but acceptance. And over time, the memories that used to sting begin to soften. The regret that used to suffocate you starts to loosen its grip. You begin to breathe again. You begin to show up differently, wiser, gentler, more grounded. Not because you're pretending it didn't happen, but because you've grown from it. You've honored the lesson and released the punishment. That's when you know the healing is real, when you can hold your past without being trapped by it, when you can speak your story without shame, when you look in the mirror and say, I forgive you, we're moving forward now. That's not weakness. That's the deepest kind of strength. That's the quiet revolution of self-forgiveness. That's what integration feels like.